I just want to talk a little bit more about private DLT systems and why I think when it comes to banks, okay, private DLT systems are more appealing to banks. Now, I've addressed some of the points already going through these articles, but just to round it all up, one of the main reasons is privacy reasons. You have to understand that these banks like Goldman, JP Morgan, and all the rest of them, they don't want sensitive financial data to be exposed on a public network, like the XRP ledger, for example. A private DLT system, it would give these banks greater control over the data and over the visibility of the data as well, and who can access that data. This makes it easier for the banks to comply with regulations surrounding data confidentiality. Because if they were issuing on the public DLT system like XRPL, then it's going to be hard for them to comply with certain things like privacy. It's all public. Everyone can see what they're issuing and so on and so forth, which wallet it's going to, who the wallet belongs to. And it's just not private enough for banks. Another reason is compliance with regulations, because you have to remember that banks, they are under strict regulatory compliance, and which they have to adhere to. For example, they have to adhere to regulatory compliance regarding KYC, AML, data privacy, customer protection, and so on. So it's easier for banks to handle these regulatory requirements using private networks than using public DLT systems, which would be more challenging to meet these regulatory requirements with. And then we have the issue of adaptability. A private DLT system can be made to be adaptable to the specific needs of a bank. For example, when it comes to scalability and performance, a private DLT system may perform better for banks than a public network that would very likely have performance limitations or scalability issues. So you have to think about this. Imagine, for example, a bank needs to make a quick change to tailor a specific need. They can easily implement that change with their private DLT network. However, if they're using a public DLT system and they have no control over it and it's not scalable for them, then they're going to have issues, aren't they? And another major important point is governance. Banks want to have control over the networks they use, especially for their internal processes. So when it comes to governance, things like consensus mechanisms and participation in their networks, this control is important to banks. A public network, on the other hand, would give them no control over the network. So this is why I think, for the most part, banks won't be using public DLT systems. But there would always be exceptions. Just like if you look hard enough, you would find an exception somewhere where a bank has issued a bond, for example, on a public DLT system. So you would always find these exceptional cases where a public DLT system may have been used by a bank for a certain use case, for example. But I'm talking about, for the most part, I don't think banks will be rushing to use public DLT networks over private systems, and this article just confirms it anyways. We're not allowed to issue on public blockchain. However, with that being said, I would say I'm open-minded. There's always the possibility that with regulatory frameworks adapting to encompass public DLT systems and technology evolving to make it possible for banks to remain regulatory compliant whilst using public DLT systems. This may lead to an increase in their utilization by banks. And I believe that's possible. If there's regulatory framework that includes public DLT systems and there's technology that enables public DLT systems to be used by banks while still remaining regulatory compliant, then there's a possibility that there may be an increased uptake of public DLT systems by banks. But with that being said, I still think, for the most part, personally, that banks will start out using private DLT systems, and they would prefer to do that than use public DLT systems like the XRP ledger, for example. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so as to not miss my next video.